All set? Okay. This time we'll call the meeting of the Oroville City Planning Commission to order. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Flicker,
Here.
Commissioner Britton,
Here.
Commissioner Chapman, Commissioner Jenkins,
Here.
Commissioner Sears,
Here.
Vice Chair Durling, Chairperson Robison.
Here. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May be seated. Okay. At this time, the instructions to individuals who wish to speak. Looks like I have a number of slips for every person that's here, so I don't need to tell you to fill out a blue slip. I will introduce the item and ask staff to introduce the item for our public hearings, after which time I will open the public hearing. If we have an applicant here, then they'll get to speak. After that, I'll open the public hearing and take public comment. After that, public comment will be closed and we'll limit discussion between commissioners and staff. Moving on, our first section here is public comments. This is actually an opportunity for people to speak on an item that applies to the Planning Commission but is not on the agenda. Is there anyone here who wishes to do so? Seeing none, we'll move on to regular business. Ordinance to limit or prohibit a sale of flavored tobacco products in Oroville. Staff?
Thank you. Commissioners, this is your second discussion on this topic, which includes additional information that you requested prior to making a recommendation to the City Council. As a reminder, this item was sent to you by the Council, and they are asking for your recommendation about how to change the zoning code to limit or ban the use of flavored tobacco products within the city limits. At your last meeting, you discussed a number of pros and cons. You rejected the draft ordinance as presented and directed staff to come back with three options. The first is to take no action, and that's assuming the state will act soon or some other overarching jurisdiction that encompasses Oroville. To limit sales to smoke shops only, and third, more nuanced or more limited focused ban options. So we've done quite a bit of research. I'll talk about each of those options. They're described in the staff report, but I'll briefly go over each. The no action option, there's been a lot of activity at the state level and in other jurisdictions. This environment is changing daily. So there's lots of momentum for a ban. A couple of the most recent things, Governor Newsom on September 16th issued an executive order directing that $20 million be spent on education and marketing against vaping and youth smoking. The State Assembly Committee on Health held a hearing on October 16th, and it was a 4-hour-long hearing. There is a staff report for that in your packet, and we're now expected to have legislation introduced to regulate vaping and e-cigarettes to some degree, which would likely be taken up by the legislature next year. And then the FDA is still working on advancing a policy to address youth e-cigarette use. They have not banned e-cigarettes in the meantime. The second option, limiting sales to smoke shops only, is a limited ban. We have, as you know, 5 smoke shops in the city. If tobacco retailers, our 40 tobacco retailers, were unable to sell flavored tobacco products, a lot of those sales would shift to our 5 tobacco retailers. Smoke shops. What that likely means is that there would be more control over the age of patrons coming into these smoke shops because entrance is controlled, and there would be increased sales from these shops. The third option, the nuanced and less restrictive ban options, we reviewed the various jurisdictions, the cities and counties that have taken action, and there are 9 listed in the staff report. 9 of the jurisdictions exempt menthol from their bans, which is a long time. I mean, my dad used to smoke menthol cigarettes when I was very young. Menthol is the only flavor FDA allows in cigarettes. A second option, limit the ban to e-cigarettes and associated e-liquids. Several jurisdictions have done that. Third, limit the ban to flavored e-liquids only, exempting pure liquid nicotine, and still allowing e-cigarettes. So that's the most focused of all. Juul, in fact, pulled many of its flavored cigarettes from the market. Fourth, ban sales online by sellers that are located in your jurisdiction, which a couple of jurisdictions have done. I believe Berkeley and Oakland have done that. Fifth, prohibit tobacco retailers within 500 feet of an existing retailer or of a school. My understanding is that new tobacco retailers already have that limitation. Is that correct? Yeah. Already have that limitation, but still a couple of jurisdictions have put that in their ordinances. 6, limit sales of flavored cigars and cigarellos to packs of 5 or 20, or to individual cigars that cost $5 or more. The rationale there is, of course, that youth in particular would not be able to afford a 20-pack or a 5-pack rather than an individual flavored cigar. 7, extend the smoking ban to more public places such as parks and public events. The county of Mono has done that. I think they're the only one that's done that, but I thought that was quite interesting. 8, cap the number of tobacco retailers, much like smoke shops are now limited. We now have 1 tobacco retailer for every 325 residents in our city. And then 9, enact a ban of any of these types, but delay implementation and enforcement to give retailers time to adjust, to get rid of their inventory, and or give the state legislature some time to act. Most of the jurisdictions deferred implementation for 6 months, and then another period of time, sometimes another 6 months before enforcement begins. So that's those are some of the most interesting options in the ordinances that the cities and counties have enacted. We'd like to note some other new information and occurrences. On October 1st, 29 communities had taken action with ordinances, and now it's over 50, and that number is rising daily. We met with OPD, the Oroville Police Department, and they noted that their most significant enforcement and criminal activities surround vaping and youth use of tobacco. They have many fewer issues with other tobacco uses and sales and adult use of tobacco. The sheriff is actively engaged in sting operations. They've held, I think, 3 sting operations over the last year to find tobacco retailers that are selling to youth. And they have found some in Oroville. Oroville Elementary School District is implementing, with partnership of the OPD and others, a grant to, I think it's a $425,000 grant, something like that, to educate students and to beef up anti-vaping and smoking security with things like cameras and vape detectors and that sort of thing. The ban, a full ban, means that convenience store owners, tobacco retailers, and smoke shops will lose a significant product line. The letter from the American Petroleum and Convenience Store Association, that's in your packet, that's on page 134, and the email that I received from their chapter president, who was here last month and testified. And independent research that I've done indicates that about 43% of all convenience store sales are tobacco. Most of that is cigarettes. They broke it out between cigarettes and other tobacco products, and something like 11% of sales are other tobacco products, and some smaller percentage of that is flavored tobaccos and e-cigarettes. The letter and the discussions I've had with them indicate that they oppose the bans, as you heard before. They instead favor stepping up education and enforcement and waiting until the state acts. The letter that I mentioned does offer to participate in local educational efforts. A ban would mean that the city would likely lose $10,000 to $20,000 per year in sales tax revenues, and perhaps more if the convenience stores lose additional sales, as they've stated in their literature and verbally. Those sales would for now go to the unincorporated area. So after tonight's meeting, staff will prepare a summary and forward the commission's recommendation to the city council, excuse me, at its December 3rd meeting. However, we also, as I mentioned before, request that one or more commissioners also attend so that they can be spokespersons for the complete commission. And then the council would presumably then direct staff to prepare some type of an ordinance. And the tentative schedule is for a first reading December 17th and a second reading and possible enactment January 7th or the 21st. I'll conclude there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. This time, I'm going to open the public hearing. We'll start with the first slip I have, Ellen Michaels.
Good evening. My name is Ellen Michaels, and I'm with Butte County Public Health Department. I would like to remind you why this is a public health issue. Tobacco use underlies many of the top killers in Butte County and here in Oroville. Heart disease, cancer, lung disease, stroke, even diabetes. And vaping nicotine is a form of tobacco use. Nicotine is highly addictive, and allowing companies to flavor nicotine like candy and promote it to teens is bad for public health and bad for the health of Oroville residents. It could lead to increased rates of tobacco-related illness and death, with all of the associated costs, which are mostly borne by the taxpayer. I want to give you an update on what's happening with the vaping-associated lung injury outbreak. As of yesterday, there have been 2,290 cases and 47 deaths. That's approximately an additional 1,000 cases since the commission met last month. And the number of deaths has almost doubled. The great majority of cases reported using THC-containing products, but 13% reported exclusive use of nicotine products. Vitamin E acetate has been identified as a possible cause of the lung injuries. Vitamin E is safe to ingest or eat, but it was never meant to be inhaled. And that's the problem with so many of the ingredients in e-cigarettes. They were never meant to be inhaled, and we're just finding out what kinds of damage they can do to lungs. Even the chemicals used to create the flavors are of concern. You've probably heard about popcorn lung. That's the irreversible lung damage caused by the chemical diacetyl, which is used to create buttery flavors. There was a case reported in the news just this morning of a 17-year-old who developed this illness after vaping for only 5 months. He was hospitalized on lung support for 3 weeks before he started to improve, and he still suffers from chronic lung damage. Other flavorings, cinnamon and menthol flavorings, have been shown to damage the lining of blood vessels, which may increase the risk of cardiovascular disease. Please prioritize the health of young people and other members of your community above the scare tactics about business loss that you have probably heard from those in the nicotine industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Blankenship.
Good evening. I'm Deanne Blankenship. I'm with the California Health Collaborative. You should know that there are non-flavored or tobacco-flavored products in all forms, including e-cigarettes, e-juice, chew, and cigarettes. So these products will still be available for all tobacco retailers, non-flavored. As Mr. Irvin's reported, there has been a 30% increase for a total of 50 California jurisdictions that have adopted some type of ban. As of November 1st, there have been 5 more first hearings in jurisdictions in California. They'll soon be added to the list. Closer to home, the City of Chico's Internal Affairs Committee recently voted unanimously to send a full ban to the City Council. Earlier this week, Anderson's City Council unanimously voted to ban the sale of all flavored products. And on November 19th, the City of Alturas adopted a flavored tobacco ban by unanimous support of a very conservative council that included 2 smokers and a chewer. The City of Corning and Glenn County have both asked their staff to develop a policy. Since the adoption of the first flavored tobacco restriction in Santa Clara in 2010, there have been no evidence of black market sales of any of these products. I know that was mentioned in some of the information that the retailers provided. This issue isn't just about whether retailers sell or not. It's also an issue of exposure and marketing that influence teens wanting to use these products. All of the jurisdictions that have passed policies to date knew that they may lose sales tax revenue. But they did it because the health and wellness of their youth are more important. So I ask that you don't wait for the state or the feds. It could be years, and leadership starts locally. Thank you.
Thank you. Troy McClanahan.
Good evening, council members. I run an after-school youth group at the African American Family and Cultural Center, and we just recently did a survey for the young men and women who attend our program if they had awareness about e-cigs and flavored tobacco, as well as have they ever done it or have they known anyone who's ever done it, and all of them know someone their age who has done vape or e-cigarettes or flavored tobacco. They spoke of things like having competitions, who can produce the most smoke. Not only is that dangerous with that amount of smoke or vape being in your lungs, but it can also be essential because a lot of the e-cigs use a heated coil that can potentially be dangerous when overworked. So we do have evidence that a lot of these kids are being exposed to these types of tactics. They are getting it from a variety of different locations, as they did tell me. They told me sometimes they would get it from friends. Sometimes they said they would get it from people selling it at these schools. We've even spoken with resource officers who do come to our center, and they stated that the flavored tobacco, the e-cigs, the jewels, they typically are the things that get confiscated the most. I think it's essential that we remove the avenues in which the kids are obtaining these items. I think it's also really important, not only are we educating them, but letting them know about the secondary traumas that come along with it. Like I said, the batteries, the smoke, what it can do, the long-term and short-term effects. Even then, like I said, the resource officers have told things like the kids are getting more effective at hiding it too, given the fact some of them even look like flash drives. There's a lot of deception. I think there's a lot of misinformation in the marketing that's going on that our children are being exposed to. So hopefully that you guys will all consider this in your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for the slips, and I don't see anybody else out in the audience, but is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this issue? Seeing none, close the public hearing, limit discussion between commissioners and staff. Questions or comments? Commissioner Sears?
Can you hear me now? I think we're pretty well aware of how awful these products are. Excuse me, and I'm not a smoker. I tried to eat a cinnamon. Just flavored flavor isn't good. The interesting thing about the 47 deaths to date is that the average age of those people is 53. So those people weren't hooked on these flavors or these vapes when they were children. But it does underscore the danger of getting children started younger and dying younger and younger. So what I'm predicting will happen here is that 53 number will start to come down, unfortunately. In that same, I saw the same research that one of your speakers cited about the oily vitamin E acetate. But in that same article, many of these products are purchased on the street or from unknown sources. For a while, the President of the United States was considering a ban on flavored tobacco products, but he later abandoned it after several of his followers objected. So I was thinking that was going to just fix the problem for us. The state of California is currently suing Juul, which is, in reaction to that, removing a lot of its flavored products from the market. And I believe that the growing number of jurisdictions, small and large, throughout the state, who are considering ordinances or adopting them, are going to put even more pressure on the state. I would strongly recommend that we write a letter to Sacramento urging adoption of a statewide ordinance. The reason I oppose doing it locally is that it does not create a level playing field for merchants. That's my biggest objection to it. Unfortunately, these people could just go to Gridley or Biggs, or somebody could pop up out in Palermo and have a store. So when we went through this with tobacco, it was the same thing 30 years ago. If we had just waited, it was less than a year. The state came down with an ordinance that was tougher than the one Oroville had been proposing. That's what I got to say.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I guess maybe one question. I saw the sheriff's press release since the last meeting about the sting. I saw that 3 shops south of Oroville got in trouble. They also do the sting within the city of limits of Oroville?
Yes, they do that within as well. And I don't know the outcome of the latest sting as to where these stores were. I don't know if Ms. Blankenship knows or not.
I believe they just finished them, so they haven't.
So they don't have.
I believe the press release, it said the 7-Eleven on Monte Vista and 1 or 2 of the shops in Palermo.
Yeah, they've just done another sting. I don't know the results of that yet, or where they went.
Which are all right outside of our city limits.
I believe I heard this morning that, and don't quote me on this, but I think Minnesota was the first state to make a statewide ban.
Yes, that's correct.
That is correct, yeah.
Yeah, I think the ball's rolling.
Yeah, I think, I really agree with the comment that, make it a level playing field. I think the state really needs to step up and, I mean, if they're gonna ban it, ban it. But if you start hitting and missing this thing everywhere, then they'll just go somewhere else.
Do you have anything you want to add?
I wrote in my notes, just stepping up enforcement and then just waiting till the FDA comes out with a report or the state makes a decision. Talking about driving to 7-Eleven or to 14th Street Jiffy, I mean, it's our community as a whole is very large, and I really think that it would, as they were saying, I mean, you could literally drive down the street, and on this side you can't buy, but this side you could buy. And until it's all, if it was Butte County, I'd be more for it. But as in just the way our city lines run, I'm not for it. And I've had family members die of smoking, and so I hate it with a passion. But I just don't think this is the right way to do it.
So what I'm hearing is that it seems like we're leaning towards a recommendation of no action.
Not entirely.
No?
Not entirely. I would make a motion for adopting the first option with the added item of sending a letter to the governor, encouraging the state to pass an ordinance. And why? About creating the level playing field. And that's how we felt.
All right. Yeah, because if I was if there was discussion of enacting a ban, the only way I'd go forward is it was one of the more nuanced bans, because the blanket ban, I don't tend to like blanket bans for anything. I don't think they're well thought, they're reactionary, not real well thought out. So I'd want to be specific, because there are areas that just banning all flavored tobacco beyond e-cigarettes and vaping hit some things that would be not necessarily intended.
I think we need to urge the governor to act quickly
Well, I think
before this industry gets a larger toehold.
as was mentioned, this seems to have a lot of momentum. I anticipate that we're going to have legislation on this pretty quickly.
Didn't this come around mainly, is what I'm hearing, is to keep it out of the youth? Okay, that's 21 and under. So what about the 22 and over population who would like to purchase it?
Right.
You kind of have to think about them too. I know it's not good to anybody.
Well, and that was kind of the discussion we had last time, where one of the premise of the idea of just because it's flavored, it's automatically targeting children, I don't agree with. As if,
Yeah.
adults don't like
Oh,
flavored
yeah,
things,
right.
but, I don't know. It's,
Okay.
like I said, I said last time it was a tough decision for me, actually. I don't particularly like smoking, but
No, I don't either. I hate it. And that average age of 53 was fascinating to me. Also, when they autopsied 29 people, every single one of them had a vitamin E oily acetate thing, which is found in cannabis vaping solutions. And I don't know how many I don't think any of our local shops are selling cannabis products. It's just tobacco with flavor, if I'm
They're not supposed to be, yeah.
But I do see making it like candy as a gateway. They're losing adults to smoking because smoking ordinances have cut back on smoking and made it easier for people to quit, frankly. You go to rent a car, you're not allowed to smoke in that. Or rent a hotel room, you pay a $250 fine, et cetera. So, you know, it's going to take some legislation to help. But we're never going to be able to control the other sources, the black market and so forth. We're never going to be able to control that. But we can at least make a dent in how cool it is or how popular it is by making it scarcer.
There are no other questions or comments open for a motion.
That was my motion, to not do nothing, but to send a letter to the state, but not take any action other than that.
Do we have to go with one of these three options? Or
No, we can make
propose-
whatever motion you want to make.
Okay.
So your motion, to clarify, your motion is to take no action on passing an ordinance ourselves, but to recommend the city council send a letter
Yes,
to the governor
yes.
In support of-
or the state government
And the
in support
time,
of legislation.
and the
statewide
time is of the
legislation.
essence.
So
It would save a lot of little, we have 471
Are we
incorporated cities.
specifying the governor or just the state government? The governor specifically?
I would say the governor.
I think that'd probably be a good idea.
You know, we've got 471 incorporated cities. We could save them all a lot of time and money in hearings and paperwork and everything else.
There's a motion,
We can also send it to the governor with CC to the Department of Health,
Department of
Public
Health.
Health, and
And
every
the
place
state
else.
legis-
So, yeah,
Yeah,
and the
absolutely.
legislature.
state legislature. There's a motion. Is there a question? There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a motion, a second. Any question as to the motion? Nope. Okay, please open the voting.
Can I just make sure that I got this right before we open the voting? I bet, so your motion is to take no action, but to send a letter to the governor / CCing the department,
No,
Health and
no
legislators.
action in regards to an ordinance.
an ordinance, yes. And to encourage quick adoption of regulations at the state level.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I wrote that down. Oops, hold on, hold on.
Your vote? Does anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none, voting is closed.
Motion carries.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, moving on to director's report. Director Urban.
Have a few items to cover for information. Probably you all know this, but Chipotle opened on Tuesday. KFC is set to open by this weekend, and they both had final inspections yesterday. Thirdly, we're working with the Butte Transit and a developer to prepare a multi-million-dollar grant application for a 100-unit multifamily development at Nelson and Table Mountain. How many units? 100 to 108 at this time. This is 7 vacant acres that are zoned R3. The grant is intended to fund affordable housing, sidewalks within a half a mile of the site, bike lanes within a half a mile, and additional transit facilities, whether that's additional bus stops or parking or dial-a-rides or lots of other options that we're discussing. Yes. Yeah. Well, this is the first phase, so there may be more. So far, they're intending to build these at the maximum general plan capacity of 20 units per acre. And they're discussing leaving that corner parcel vacant for now for possible future commercial or a park or a transit facility. Say again? No, this is,
Right by the roundabout.
yeah,
that-
right by the roundabout.
That lot that kind of goes to a tip.
Yes, they're under retailed up there. So that is, there's no application at this time, but we're actively in discussions, lots of us for this grant application. We think we have a good chance for it to be, at this point, the guess is that it's about $12 million that would be split for a lot of different affordable housing and transit and bikeways and such. And one of the discussions is we're trying to work in completing the bike lane from the roundabout down across the bridge into downtown, which would involve a lot of cutting of the hillside in order to make the road wide enough. So that's our hope. The February 11th is the application deadline for that, so we have some time to work it out. Fourth, we are moving forward with the South Lincoln annexation and the South Oroville rezone project. We're trying to schedule a public meeting on both topics in the South Oroville area on December 10th, 11th, or 12th, and that's assuming we can find a venue for that meeting. Fifth, we have received a use permit application for a new Starbucks at Olive and Lower Wyandotte. This would be the second Starbucks in town. It would replace Ron's Drive-In. Get them now. That will be on your December 18th agenda for approval. Sixth, Haven of Hope has applied for and received an administrative permit for a 6-bed residential care facility at their Meyer Street location. They have withdrawn their previous use permit application. We are trying to complete preparation of 3 ordinances, the sign ordinance that has been requested by the Planning Commission, and we're trying to get to it, but there's lots and lots of development activity and pre-development activity out there right now. Secondly, a new shopping cart ordinance, as I mentioned last time, which has been directed by the City Council to try and mitigate all the shopping carts that are spread throughout the town. Yes?
I got some feedback from Walgreens about that. They're not happy about it. They're losing their carts, but they can't afford to retrofit them.
That's one of the concerns about smaller retailers as to how they can accomplish that. Yeah. So the next step will be to invite all the shopping cart owners to a meeting and a session to discuss how this might be accomplished. And third, a new sidewalk vendor ordinance. State law prohibits banning sidewalk vendors, but authorizes local governments to regulate them. And we have mobile food truck ordinance, but we do not have a sidewalk vendor ordinance, so we should prepare that. We've had several inquiries by folks who want to just wander around the town selling products and things. So that's my report. So.
I need to turn this on. Has D.R. Horton put any permits in for the second phase out there?
Not yet, but as you know, we've extended the map.
Okay,
They asked
yeah.
for up to a year to get themselves ready to do that.
Yeah, I know that they visited the land guy was out here yesterday, matter of fact. So I'm sure not long.
Well, that does remind me, Vista del Oro on the other side, on Larkin. They are preparing to submit plans for 15 homes to build those. And they have received an administrative permit for their sales trailer. So they are moving forward with that.
And who is this?
This is Crown Development out of
Yeah,
Yuba
okay.
City.
And those will be middle to higher homes, priced homes, I would think, like 300 and 350.
No, they'll be 3-bedroom, 1-story homes.
Oh, they're gonna do one story.
Yeah, in the 300 and some of them even under 300
Wow.
range.
Hello. Is that because?
You just aren't moving enough.
I don't know how to on.
Okay, commission reports. Do any commission members have any reports from any? We don't have any subcommittees or anything going on right now, so. Okay, then we will adjourn to, is this time correct? Wednesday, December 18th?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the date we picked last time, right? December 18th, 2019, 7 PM.
Thanks, sir.
Jackie, you got